Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. We're finally getting into the ranking for the Night of the Demons franchise. There are only 4 movies in the franchise, parts 1, 2, 3 and the remake from 2009. And I thought, going into this and rewatching all the films, I thought I was going to hate at least half of the movies from what I remember. But to be honest, I enjoyed all of them in a different way. There is only one in the franchise, which is number 4, and we'll talk about. There's only one in the franchise that I thought was bad, but watchable. But the rest of them I actually enjoyed. So let's get into the worst to the best. And at number 4 is Night of the Demons 3. That's no surprise because this film felt the cheapest out of them all. And it might not have been the cheapest out of them all, but it definitely did look at. It looked like a straight-to-TV movie that you would watch on a Sunday night at 11 p.m. There's just something about it that feels very cheap, and I did mention in the review that it looked like an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, only an R-rated episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark. It wasn't bad, but it's one of these films that you don't really want to watch unless you're doing a video like this and you want to do a review for it or do a ranking for it. That's the only time I would really go back and watch it. The only saving grace for this film really was Angela coming back, because without Angela, nothing really resembles anything to do with the first 2 movies. Even the house that they use in the film is not recognisable. It's only the storyline itself and the fact that Angela has just been plopped into it. It felt like a heist movie, like from Dusk Till Dawn. The beginning of it was like a heist, and then the next part of the film was a horror. They tried to implement some CGI in it that just didn't work, but at the same time, the practical effects were still there. The practicals were still good. I liked how the demons became the demons, like the humans were turning into them. So there was some saving grace for the film. The story was interesting. It was interesting enough for me to watch it from beginning to end, but ultimately it is the worst in the franchise. And at number 3 is the remake from 2009. And this was a tough decision because I actually really liked this one, and it was very close between this one and number 2, but this one just edges out as being the number 3 spot. And I really do like this one. I was very surprised that I was going to like it because the original was such an iconic and nostalgic film for a lot of people. But for me, getting into this film, the original wasn't nostalgic for me at the time when I first watched this one, because I watched the original as an adult. So maybe that's why I really enjoyed this one more than maybe other people would who go into the original loving the original. Because for me, the original wasn't a film that I grew up with, so I don't have the full nostalgic connection. But then watching this one, I was pleasantly surprised because the acting was really good. They used practical effects for most of the movie. If there was any CGI, it was very minimal and unrecognisable at times. So they've done everything right with this remake. The only problem I had with this one, or 2 problems, was the script wasn't up to scratch as much as I wanted it to be with Colin and his drug dealing malarkey. And my other issue was it just didn't get a wide release. I think if it got released anywhere, probably in the US and Canada, it was a very limited release. Here in the UK, we didn't get a release at all. We only got the we got the Blu-ray and the DVD, and even at that, it sold out, and it never came back out on any special editions or anything. So it's a very unloved film that people seem to forget. Some people don't even know this movie exists. So if you don't know it exists, guys, give it a watch. And at number 2 is Night of the Demons Part 2. And again, this is very close to number 1. And it's also very close to number 3 on my list as well. The 3 movies in the top of my list are very close. Night of the Demons 2 is probably the one with the best storyline. And I was going to say the most realistic storyline, but it's a storyline that expands the universe of Night of the Demons, because it doesn't just set place in Hull House. It goes to the church school, like the boarding school thing. So it takes the story out with and expands the story, does a little bit more with it. I know that the remake tries to do that with the 7 Souls, but this one, because it's still really connected to the first film, then it feels more natural. For a film from 1994 as well, the 90s wasn't kind to horror films, and I think maybe when people watch this film, they weren't kind to it to begin with, but I think it's got a following now. It feels like more of a cult classic now, almost in line with the original. So when you look at films from the mid-90s, I think Night of the Demons 2 stands head and shoulders above a lot of them. When it comes to the practical effects for Night of the Demons 2 as well, I think the practicals in this film were the best in the franchise, even better than the remake. And you would think with the advancements of practical effects, the remake would be better, but it's not. I think the 94 movie outdoes every film in the franchise for those practicals. And at number 1 is, of course, Night of the Demons 1 from 1988. It wasn't a sure thing that this would be number 1 for me, because when I remember watching it back in the day and then watching part 2 straight after it, and I thought part 2 was possibly a little better. And then when I watched the remake, I remember thinking, do you know what? The remake might actually be better as well. So it wasn't a surefire thing that part 1 was going to be number 1. But rewatching them all for this review and this ranking, I thought, do you know what? Number 1 is the best. For a film that I watched as an adult, I feel like I have started to build up that nostalgia towards Night of the Demons, but it has got everything that I wanted in a late 80s horror movie. It's got the girls, of course, when I was young. It's got the characters that I loved. It's got the scary haunted house. Everyone's dressed up for Halloween. They're doing a séance. They were doing everything in this film that I wanted to do as a kid growing up. So when I watched it as an adult, I'm like, that's what I wanted to do as a kid. That's what I missed. But if you mix that in with the good practical effects, the all-round good story, it's just a basic story, but it's a good story, and it's got a happy ending for a couple of the characters, and then it leaves it on a cliffhanger because the demons just stayed in the house. They didn't defeat the demons. All they done was escape from the demons. So great ending to a fantastic horror movie. So that's my ranking for the movies, guys. That might be a lot different to some of you guys. I do know that most of you should have part 3 at the bottom of your list, but I don't know about the other 3 because they could go up and down. Even for me, they could go up and down as the years go by. But what are your thoughts, guys? What is your ranking for the Night of the Demons movies? There are only 4 on the list, so try your best if you can to tell me all 4 down below. And as always, thanks a lot for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you soon.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played Skin the Cat?
Stop